All right, another spark and another build. The forge bell rings. Let's get to work. Today we're tackling something big, something fundamental. We're going to the very heart of how a game is played. We're talking about the brand new trading card game called Tools and Titans.
Now, we've talked about the world, the lore, the grand factions. We've explored the mighty Tool Titans and their shadowy Rustborn counterparts. But we get this question all the time. How do you actually play? What does a single turn, a single heartbeat of the game truly look like?
It's the most important question you can ask, because the turn sequence in Tools and Titans is the engine for everything else. It's the rhythm of the game. It's the blueprint for every victory and every defeat. A six-step mantra of creation and progress.
So, how do you play Tools and Titans? It's a cycle, a clean, dependable process. Easy. Draw your cards. You gain new options, new strategies. Charge your energy. You build the resources needed to act. Build your field. You play your tools and structures, creating your foundation. Act with your powers. You use abilities, set tasks, and shift the flow of the game. Clash with your titans. The moment of impact where titans and structures collide. End your turn. The board state is set, ready for your opponent. 6 steps.
One epic battle. 6 steps. Simple, clean. A perfect foundation for strategy and skill. Draw, charge, building act, clash, end. It's a cycle of creation, of forward momentum.
But what happens when that cycle gets infected? What happens when that clean, dependable process becomes a weapon against you? When the very steps you take to build something up are twisted to tear it all down from within?
That brings us to today's topic, a group so philosophically inverted, so thematically haunting. They use the very process of growth as a weapon. They take that 6-step mantra of creation and turn it into a countdown to decay. Today we descend into the rotted mirror of sustainability. We're talking about the corrupted green.
Get ready. This isn't about brute force or explosive endings. This is about sabotage, parasitic corruption, and weaponized entropy masquerading as life.
So let's start with the big question. Who or what are the corrupted green?
The corrupted green are a faction of 6 Rustborn anti-titans. And the key word there is anti-titans. Each one is a perverted, twisted reflection of a member of the Green Six. The faction dedicated to renewal, patience, and ecosystem balance.
Right, the Green Six. Titans like Verdesia and Celeritan. They're all about sustainable growth, clean energy, and harmony with the land. They build, they nurture, they compost.
Exactly. But where their counterparts represent harmony, the corrupted green stand for twisted cycles and unnatural regeneration. They are not just evil versions. They are a mockery, a philosophical plague. Let's meet the 6 members and see how deep this rot goes.
First up, the ruin of Celeritan, Duskarid. Celeritan is all about pure, generative sunlight. Her abilities heal, shield, and empower. So Duskarid is what? A shadow?
Worse. It's a blacklight parasite. It doesn't just block light, it inverts it. Imagine a card effect that says, heal all your titans for 2. If Duskarid is on the field, its power changes that text. Suddenly, that card reads, deal 2 damage to all your titans instead. It weaponizes hope.
So it turns your own strengths against you. That's brutal. Okay, next is Snarequill. The mockery of Aravana, who commanded the winds of liberation and freedom. Her gameplay is about movement, speed, and repositioning.
Snarequill twists that ideal into its most literal, horrifying conclusion. It uses wind as a method of entrapment. It plays task cards called wind nets or vortex spindles that lock down zones. If your Titan tries to move out of that zone, it takes damage. If it stays, it takes damage. It's freedom inverted into a cage with closing walls.
I'm starting to see the pattern here. It's about corrupting the core concept. What about Drownwire, the decay of Hydrina? Hydrina is about the pure, life-giving flow of water.
Drownwire is invasive waterlogging. It's the suffocating momentum of a mudslide. Its powers don't cleanse, they contaminate. It creates sludge counters that increase the energy cost of your cards. First, it costs 1 extra to play a tool, then 2, then 3. It slows everything you do to a grinding, choking halt until you can't afford to act at all.
Next is Shortveil, the glitch of Voltessence. Voltessence was a master of stable energy storage, a living battery. Her whole deal is building up a huge reserve of power for one massive turn.
Shortveil is a catastrophic battery feedback loop. It represents corrupted, unstable reserves. It has abilities that say, at the start of your turn, if you have more than 5 energy in your reserve, lose it all and take that much damage. It punishes you for planning ahead, for saving. It's a walking power surge designed to make your own strength your greatest liability.
Okay, 2 left. Crustmour, the inversion of Terravuel. Terravuel was the steadfast, stable earth, the bedrock, fortress-style gameplay.
Crustmour is that bedrock, shattered. It unleashes what the game calls earthquake spores. It creates terrain that seems stable at first. It might even give you a defensive bonus, but it has a hidden timer. After 2 turns, that terrain collapses, dealing massive damage to everything in that zone. It offers a gift that is secretly a time bomb.
And finally, the one that embodies the entire faction. Rotbrynt, the Rot of Verdesia, the titan of bioenergy and regrowth.
This one is the most insidious. Rotbrynt is a biohazard bloom, a parasitic overgrowth. Verdesia's whole purpose was to create life from decay, composting. She uses the discard pile as a resource. Rotbrynt perfects that cycle, but for its own parasitic end. It makes things grow, yes, but it grows rot. It has abilities that pull cards from your discard pile back onto your field, but they enter with blight counters that damage you every turn. It forces your dead back into service as zombies working against you.
So these aren't just monsters. They are corruption incarnate. Flawed reflections, twisted through Rustborn rituals, and a false mimicry of natural ecosystems.
That's what makes them so terrifying. They represent the complete and utter failure of harmony. This is what happens when nature is forced into broken industrial cycles. Its sustainability inverted into a self-consuming system. A philosophy of rot as rebirth, where death exists only for the sake of spreading more death, not for restoration. So where did these things even come from? This level of thematic poison has to have a story. When did they emerge?
The lore here is fascinating and tragic. The corrupted green were born during an event called the Verdant Collapse. This was supposed to be a moment of triumph. Imagine a whole continent scarred and rusted from the Guild Wars. The Green Six planned a continent-wide restoration project using a pure energy source called the Eco-Weave, channeled through the central Shrine of 12.
But the Rustborn were one step ahead. They didn't launch a frontal assault. They were more subtle. They infiltrated the echo wells of Aquaria, the very source of the planet's life energy. Think of them as the planet's circulatory system. And when the Green Six tried to initiate this grand restoration, to send a pulse of life across the lands, the Rustborn sent corrupted feedback through the wells.
It was like injecting a virus into a blood transfusion. The pulse of life went out, but it was tainted. It mutated the very blueprints of the Green Six, creating these 6 parasitic reflections in their image. So this is key. These beings weren't born of betrayal from the original 6. They were engineered from the start to lie in wait, to appear only when balance is almost restored, just to sabotage it at the last second.
And that sabotage extends to the very land they inhabit. Where do they dwell? In blighted biomes, regions that were once rich in harmony and are now just plagued by decay. Each one has its own twisted home, a mockery of what it once was.
Duskarid, the anti-light parasite, dwells in the umbral bloom. Picture a grand solar garden, with crystal receivers angled at the sun. Now imagine them shattered, pointing down, drawing a sickening, weak, rot light up from the poisoned soil. The air is cold and smells of dust and ozone.
Snarequill lives in the vortex spindle. This was once a region of vast open plains with winds that powered turbines for miles. Now it's a constant, churning tangle of winds that never stop howling. The sound alone is maddening, and it traps and shreds anything that enters.
Drownwire haunts the Leechlock Basin. These aren't serene lakes. They're the remnants of a massive irrigation project. Now the water is thick, black, and stagnant. It's flooded with a suffocating, sticky sludge that bubbles with methane.
In the player versus environment modes, these zones are everything. In a corruption drift scenario, you might see the Leechlock Basin's sludge spreading one zone per turn. You have to build barriers or purify the land before it overruns your entire side of the map.
Or in a Weave Decay arc, fighting in Shortveil's cracked capacitive shell means that any energy you don't spend at the end of your turn has a chance to short out, dealing damage to you. It forces you into inefficient plays just to stay safe. The environment itself becomes your enemy.
Okay, let's get into the gears of it. How do they actually operate on the table? It all goes back to the turn, the fundamental rhythm of the game.
Every Titan turn, draw, charge, building act, clash, end. 6 steps, infinite ways to forge your victory.
The corrupted green take that simple, elegant loop, and they poison every single step. Let's look at their core systems. First up is something called Rotcycle Loops.
So, walk me through that. Recursion is bringing cards back. How is this different?
Okay, so let's say I destroy your scrap welder tool. It goes to your discard pile. Normally, it's gone. But Rotbrynt has a power. At the end of your turn, return one tool from an opponent's discard pile to their field under your control. It gains blight. So your scrap welder comes back, but now it's on my side, and the blight counter on it deals you 1 damage at the start of every one of your turns. I'm rebuilding my board with the ghosts of your army.
Wow. Okay, that's nasty. What about the next one? Toxin Bloom.
Toxin Bloom is a plague. I play a card called Invasive Spores on your power conduit structure. It gets 1 toxin counter. That counter does nothing on its own. It's just a warning. At the end of my turn, the toxin blooms. The game checks for any of your structures in zones adjacent to the power conduit. Your forge is next to it. Now the forge gets a toxin counter too, for free.
And this just keeps spreading?
Exactly. From 2 to 4 until your entire board is covered in these little poison timers. Then I play a card that says, for each toxin counter on the field, your opponent loses 1 energy. Suddenly, your whole economy shuts down.
Then there's Decay Reflection. You said it turns healing into damage.
It's even more insidious. Duskarid has an ability on the field that says, whenever an opponent would heal, they take that much damage instead. But it has a second line of text. If that damage can't be dealt because they are shielded, you draw a card. It weaponizes their healing, and it weaponizes their defense against the first effect. There is no right move.
That's the definition of a soft lock. It feels like you're always making the wrong choice.
That is their entire philosophy. They also use parasitic tokens, spore, lash, and creep tokens. A lash token might mean a structure can't use its abilities. A creep token might mean a titan can't move. They don't destroy your things, they just make them useless, burdened.
And finally, the corrupted green weave, a trap in the resource system. How?
The Preservant faction has weave cards that say, Purge, remove 1 negative counter from a card you control. The Corrupted Green have a weave card that looks almost identical. It might say, Faux Purge, but the text reads, choose a negative counter on a card you control. Move it to another card you control. It looks like you're cleaning your board, but you're just shifting the rot around, forced to choose which of your assets gets sick this turn. It's a bait for misplays.
Okay, so with all that insidious machinery, what are their actual strengths and weaknesses?
Their biggest strength is stealth control. They disrupt decks slowly over time. You don't realize you've lost until it's far too late. Another is inevitability. If the game goes long, their engines of decay and recursion will almost always outvalue an opponent.
But they have to have a weakness. What's the biggest one?
It has to be their slow activation. All of this rot and decay takes time. Their keycards often cost 4 or 5 energy and need a few turns to start the plague. This makes them very weak in the first few turns against a fast, aggressive deck, what players call burst aggro.
So a titan like Fusio, the explosive welder, can just rush them down before they set up?
Exactly. If Fusio can deal 15 damage by turn 4, it doesn't matter if your toxin counters would have won you the game by turn 8. There is no turn 8. They're also incredibly vulnerable to weave counters. The Preservants have cards that can purge multiple counters at once, effectively resetting the board and undoing 3 turns of your work with a single card.
And the big one? No hard removal. They have almost no way to deal with a single massive threat that's played suddenly. If an opponent plays a giant 10-10 Titan, the Corrupted Green can't just play a Destroy Titan card. They don't have them. They have to hope their slow mechanics can chip it down before it takes over the game.
And finally, their combos can be fragile. The Rotcycle Loops are powerful, but if your opponent can banish cards from your discard pile, removing them from the game entirely, your whole engine grinds to a halt. Your greatest strength becomes your own undoing.
So with those in mind, a few key archetypes emerge. You've got the Corrupted Cycle Loop, led by Rotbrynt. Its goal is to fill both discard piles as quickly as possible, then use Rotbrynt's power to create an overwhelming board of resurrected, blighted tools.
There's Poison Control, with Drownwire at the helm. This deck doesn't even try to attack the enemy Titan directly for most of the game. It just focuses on spreading toxin counters everywhere, winning through a dozen small cuts.
My favorite is the Mirror Inversion Trap, using Duskarid. You actually play cards that give the opponent opportunities to heal. You bait them into activating your Decay Reflection, and they burn themselves out trying to save themselves. It's pure psychological warfare.
So in the grand narrative of Tools and Titans, they are more than just villains. Their cards, their mechanics, their very existence. They are a warning. Nature remembers when you forget to care. So what's the takeaway here? The Corrupted Green are a masterclass in thematic design. They take the foundational, orderly 6 steps of a turn, and they show how each one can be a step towards ruin.
Drawing cards becomes drawing a liability. Charging energy becomes building a bomb in your own reserves. Building your field becomes planting the seeds of your own decay. Acting with powers becomes triggering your own demise. Clashing becomes a painful, losing battle against your own former assets and ending your turn. Just gives the infection more time to spread.
They serve as a powerful message in the game's world and in its mechanics. That corruption isn't always an external force. It's not always a monster kicking down your door. Sometimes it's ideals twisted, purpose unbalanced, good intentions pushed so far they become unrecognizable.
And in telling that story, Tools and Titans becomes more than just a game of playing cards. It becomes a mirror. For the world it builds, and maybe for the cycles we find in our own.
It all comes down to how you play your turn.
In every match of Tools and Titans, your tradecraft unfolds in 6 simple moves: draw, charge, building, act, clash, end.
Simplicity for the novice.
Mastery for the Titan.